Hello Internet, and welcome to my live reaction for To Your Eternity, chapters 160.2 and 160.3. When we last left our heroes, we continued our sort of wrap-up of maybe even the entire present era, but certainly the sort of previous arc of it. As we saw a bit more denouement from Mizuha and her family as they sort of started the path towards reconciliation. We also see the Funa gang and the Occult Club try to come up with an excuse for what the hell happened at the school the past couple days. It doesn't quite go over well. But more importantly, Yuki is refusing to have the knocker that was implanted in him by the Guardian Knocker removed, as a sign of his faith in the concept of coexistence with the knockers. We see that faith sort of explored, or the idea of coexistence explored more as we talk with Michi, one of the knocker-possessed orphans, at Satoru's place. Who has, we had a little bit of, what was going on up in Knockerland, centuries back. But also, we see that, the love he feels for Sumika and Tomori has started to, he says that feeling is worth the pain, which is very, un-Knocker talk. So maybe there is a chance for peace between humans and Knockers. How they'll deal with the whole possessing people's bodies thing is a whole other question. But also, later that night, Fushi has to chat with Satoru. And Satoru tells Fushi to acquire him. Which, is a thing. So let's dive right on into Chapter 160, Part 2, Coexistence Part 2. And we pick up right where we left off with Fushi reacting to Satoru's words. Acquire you? What are you saying? And Satoru jumps off the bench. I am not joking. This was always my intention. That is what I have trained you for. To make you the ultimate being to endure in this world. Okay. So, that was a long-running theory. I was always a bigger fan of the idea that Fushi's end goal was to become purely human or something, and to die like a human or something like that. I really like that idea, because I'm not sure how much I like the idea of Fushi becoming God. But Fushi just stops Satoru. Wait, it's easy to say acquire me, but what do you mean by that? And Satoru tells him, when I will transfer all of my abilities to you. When I do so, the Knockers, along with the entire world, will be yours. Wait a second. I thought the Knockers were in opposition to the Man in Black. But now Satoru is implying that, once Fushi has his powers, the Knockers will belong to him. That's interesting. And that sort of ties into a little bit of what Satoru said last time. As long as they have bodies, the Knockers, along with everyone else, are under our protection. Which didn't really feel like it made any sense. But I don't know. Maybe there is some kind of connection between Satoru and the Knockers? But Fushi is just stunned at that. And Satoru gives him a demonstration. First, the power to create something from nothing. And he creates an orb, not unlike the orb that Fushi was at the beginning. You can make whatever you like. And he turns it into a paper airplane. Design it however you like. And move it. And he moves it with his mind. Even if it is a living thing. Which seems to be the same thing he did when he froze the Knockers in the past. But he puts these eyes on the airplane and it's seemingly alive or something. Everything that is now was once part of me. I created it, set it free, and let it develop. It belongs to me, and I can manipulate any of it. In this world, matter is stronger than Phi. Even if they attempt to take over this world as Knockers, as long as they envelop themselves in flesh, they cannot stand against me. Which is basically what we saw in the climax of this arc. In that, no matter what the Knockers did at the school, Satoru could just freeze them, and as soon as he arrived, the battle was over. I kind of am intrigued by the implications of that line, in this world, matter is stronger than Phi. Will we, perhaps in the end up going to paradise, where Phi is stronger than matter, and where Fushi's powers won't really have any effect? I don't know. Anyway, Satoru goes on, and I'm about to transfer that power to you. And Fushi is just stunned. Wait. based on what I know, if they get small enough, you can't find them. And Satoru tells him, indeed, so unless you got close, you couldn't tell where they were. Referring to, like, if the knockers, you know, how in the past you could tell where knockers were anywhere in the world, but now they're itty-bitty, he has to, like, look at them. And Satoru goes on, that's because I am now in this body. But Fushi still protests, but you said we lost. And Satoru questions, wouldn't it have been boring if I hadn't said so? Wait, when was that? Is that, like, early, like, very early in the present era? But that's just, like, a really weird thing for Satoru to say. That, like, he could have ended all of this very easily, but he just didn't because it would have been boring? Satoru really is the question, what if God was an active agent in society, but also he was kind of a dick? Is sort of who Satoru is as a person. And Fushi's just stunned. Huh? And yeah, Satoru was really getting it like the dick, and that face, he looks like an asshole there. Is there anything wrong with that? Only those with an attachment to this world can endure here. If I had given you these powers from the start, no one would have helped you, and you wouldn't have developed love for anyone. You needed that attachment before I could transfer them to you. That's a fair, like, you know, way to raise a god candidate, I suppose. But also, why did that have to happen now? Like, what is the moment now that makes Satoru do this now and not, you know, in the aftermath of Renrail or at the start of the present era? Why is it right now? I don't know. Relax. If you don't like watching your comrades die, you can stop the degradation of their bodies. Well, I've never tried it on humans, but you can test these powers as you like. You will truly be omnipotent. Okay. But that just seems like, okay. So one of my issues with the way this whole arc resolved is that it really seemed like it was building towards something about Fushi's complete refusal to respect his friends as capable allies. That he was going to baby them forever. He was never going to let them know there was any danger in the world. He would refuse to let them participate. And Fushi forcibly stopping his friends from aging seems to kind of be continuing that. I don't know. But Fushi just questions, can I use them to bring back people who are gone? And Satoru looks at him. Fushi is like, you know, now, I guess Fushi's like sort of falling to temptation here. Because he looks desperate for this power. Now that he has, like, the ability for it, now that it's, like, a possibility, all of the whole, like, learning to grow past death, or learning to grow and accept death seems to be out the window, which is, you know, a weird thing. I don't know. You want to resurrect people who have gone to paradise. Paradise is a world without matter. You cannot bring them back if the Thigh wishes to stay. But you can try it, if you'd like. And he creates this orb, I guess, containing all of his powers. And Fushi just takes the orb and falls over. End of part 2. I kind of want to dive right on into part 3. I want to know what happens next. Because, like, I don't know. I want to see what the implications of this are. So we're going to dive right on into part 3. So, focus in part 3. Satoru looks over Fushi's unconscious body. And he, like, pokes him. Perhaps it was still a little early for you. Perhaps it was still a little early for you to receive the information on all matter. No, this is within expectations. That should have given him some resistance. Fushi, I can wait 3 more years. If you want these powers, come to me. You must become me. Okay, so I'm guessing, you know, we learned in the past, in another 3 years, by the time Satoru was 15, he will have lost all memories of being the Man in Black. He will fully be this 15-year-old boy. And because we sort of, you know, reiterated back in 159 Part 1, that the erasure of memories damages the Thigh, I'm guessing once Satoru forgets this, he will no longer have these powers in his soul. Like, at all. So he has to decide in the next 3 years. He has to become, you know, worthy of them in the next 3 years. Okay. But then we cut to the Aoki house. Fushi-san, Fushi-san, we see Fushi's like, I guess Satoru has brought him back, and everyone's sort of around Fushi's bed. He's clearly just sleeping here. Like, we see the Z's out of his mouth. And Kai tells him, I'd like to clean the floor, so please wake up already. Kai, have some manners, you're in a fucking mini coma. Messar questions, how long has he been asleep? And Yuki tells him, since yesterday morning. I wonder what happened to him. Yeah, he's been out for like, if it's the next night after the previous scene, he's been out for almost 48 hours, guys. Be worried about him. But Tonari just comments, he's always passing out. But Bon tells Tonari, now, let's try to be a little kinder, Madam Tonari. And we hear this tromp noise, and my boy Gugu is back. I love him. I love Gugu. Gugu was out for the entire fucking knocker fight, and I'm bitter about that, but he's here again. Fushi! Sorry I'm late. I heard there were knockers? Yeah, you're a little bit too late, my boy. Sorry, friend. And Tonari looks at him, Gugu? Where's Fushi? Where are the knockers? And Tonari just tells him, oh, that's all over with. Huh? You can't mean... And he looks over at Fushi's unconscious body and assumes the worst, like grabs him. Fushi, don't die! You're still alive, aren't you? Aren't you? Wake up! I have missed Gugu so much. He's so good. And Fushi finally wakes up thanks to that. Literally conks his brother on the head, knocks him over, and Gugu gets up and just hugs Fushi. Thank goodness you're alright! And Fushi looks at him, Gugu? But then he remembers the last thing, I guess he was still conscious on the first page of this chapter, because he remembers the last thing that Satoru said, you must become me. And Fushi questions, I have to become the man in black? And we see he starts to tear up at that, and he's finally, at long last, he's seemingly relying on people again. Save me, Gugu. And Gugu doesn't understand what he's talking about now, just questions, Fushi? And then it seems like Fushi tells everyone, God, good for Fushi! Good for Fushi! After all the shit! After all of the whole not telling everyone what's going on, at long last, he's just being open. Like, good for him! Good for him! But it's Bon who says this. Everyone has heard this, but it's Bon who's talking now. Mr. Black wants you to inherit his powers? I see. I think I understand. And Kai comments, it's like he's invited you to become a god. Hyro, though, takes a different approach. Or maybe a demon. But Tonari's a little hesitant. Wait, this isn't settled yet, is it? Gaining the power to do anything brings with it the responsibility to do everything. That's a very particular view of God. That an omnipotent being must do everything right in the world, which this is not a theology channel. I'm not really going to get into the weeds of that. But anyway, Bon goes on. But, well, even if you don't go that far, you'll likely still feel that you have to keep watch over the knockers forever, right? But Fushi just tells him, yeah, but I already feel that way. I always have. And Messar just tells him, almost like frustrated, that I'll let you catch him with no trouble. Why don't you just do it? And what do you mean, save you? How pathetic. Which I don't think is what Fushi needed to hear right now, Messar. Relying on his friends is a good thing, not a bad one. And Tonari calls Messar out on that. This is how Fushi should act. It's a lot better than him hiding it from us. You fucking preach, girl. I still feel like no one really gave Fushi enough crap for, everything in the past year. But, I'm glad Tonari is, holding his feet to the fire now. But we also see little March hiding behind Fushi here. And then Fushi tells them all, something about it just makes me anxious. So I wonder what everyone thought. I wanted to hear your opinions. And Gugu just jumps right on in. Okay then, I'll start. I vote nay. You don't have to put up with a man in black's garbage if it's just making you anxious. Good for Gugu. I'm glad Gugu is just such a concerned bro. I love Gugu so much. He's my boy. And Tonari then sits down and agrees. I'm opposed too. Can we live with you the same way we always have when you're a god? Though that's a bit of Gugu's more concerned with Fushi. Tonari's more concerned with herself, it seems. But Kai, she's also 14. I'm gonna cut her some slack. But Kai then goes on. I'm against it as well. If your senses expand, the burden on your body will too, correct? Even if it is for our sakes, if you end up sleeping like before, I don't think it's a very good idea. Currently, we aren't under any urgent threat after all. Oh right, I forgot about the time in Renreal when he was like constantly sleeping. That was a while ago. But Bon is the only opposing vote. I'm for it. If only you can do this, then you should. Especially if we don't know what will happen. How what will happen? If we don't know how or what will I think if we don't know what will happen makes more sense than how being in there at all. You should try it and find out. And I'm curious, I know Fushi's always sort of relied on Bon in like a mentor role. I'm curious if that'll be like the winning vote for him. Fushi just reacts, Bon, and Gugu looks at him, that's scary. And Tonari snaps, are you serious? How will you take responsibility for it if something happens to Fushi? And Hydra then chimes in. If it does, I will support him to my utmost ability. If he goes through with it. I will leave the decision to Fushi. Messar takes the similar sort of like non-committed approach. I don't care either way. Just make sure my life's easy. Messar, Messar's being Messar. And then Echo drops a pot in front of Fushi. And Fushi turns into her brother and reads it. And like the image it gives is Echo arriving with all of the Immortals, having a meal together. And Fushi thinks, exactly, Echo. I want to live like this forever too. And then March comes up and tells him, Fushi, you just do what you want to do. I'll always, no matter where you are, be watching over you. And Fushi just reacts, he's genuinely touched here. March just smiles at him. Very, very mature for a first grader. And then Gugu gets up. Well, he put it off for 3 years, so you don't really need to decide yet, do you? I take it back. I agree with March. So it looks like this is going to be a little bit like a punted down the road kind of thing. And Kai then chimes in, yes, I agree with March as well. And Bon looks over, you're all so kind. Messar, ever look at a sleaze bag. I agree with me. And then sometime later, we cut to Yuki and Fushi having this conversation. As Yuki just tells him, by the way, if I were you, I'd take the powers. And Fushi it's just the two of them alone outside now. Why? I always favor having fun, even if there's no proof it'll be more fun. If it's not fun, you can just enjoy not having fun. And Fushi asks the right question there. What's that supposed to mean? But then Yuki's a bit more serious here. But just between us, Fushi, I think you're perfectly fine as you are now. And that sort of shocks Fushi. The sudden change shocks Fushi. And Yuki goes on, I'm a plain old human. So in 60 years or so, my lifespan will run out. But I have a knocker inside me. So if it does anything nasty, I could die before that. But I don't plan on letting it. I'll show it that I'm not unhappy enough to give it my body. Okay, so Yuki is acting under the impression that the knocker will just act under the old rules, the old suicide rules. Okay, that's interesting, because there's no sign that it has to do that. It could just, be an asshole and kill him. I don't know, but that statement, that whole, I won't be unhappy, is probably more about, Fushi's current situation. If I lived my natural life expectancy, you should accept that the world is peaceful, just as it is. So, Fushi, see for yourself how my life ends. That is a heavy thing to throw at Fushi. I mean, it's a great little line, especially as we do seem to be nearing the end of an era here. Like a literal in-universe era. But that's just fucking heavy, And Fushi is he's touched by Yuki's support there. But then just kind of reminds him, 60 years is too late. Yeah, I guess it is. And that's where we end. Yeah, let's talk these chapters. There's not a whole lot to say about part 2, I will say. It's most of it is just, Satoru revealing the extent of his abilities, and that's a nice thing to have on hand. But, like, it's not really the real meat of these two chapters, and I'm honestly really glad we got these two chapters together, because they work much better as a pair than part 2 would on its own. What I really like about it, or whatever, sorry, what was I about to say? The thing about it is it's largely just there to showcase what exactly Fushi is being offered. And also to reiterate that God in TYE is kind of an asshole. The whole, is there anything wrong with, like, all of the pain you went through over the past year because it wasn't boring? I mean, I guess the attachment thing is, like, relevant, but I don't know why that had to happen now as opposed to Renril. I don't know. But then we get the really good stuff is in part 3. When we see, you know, first, Gugu returns, my boy, the king himself is back. And then we get Fushi finally just, like, immediately being honest with people. He's not keeping this secret for a year from everyone. He's going to, like, hear them out. And I like that we do get to see everyone's, you know, particular viewpoints here. You know, we have people like Gugu and Tonari who are very much, you know, pro Fushi being peaceful and having a good life. We have, you know, Bon who just wants to go for it, have this power. And in the end, I do like, you know, I don't know, I'm considering, you know, the element of Fushi needs to rely on his friends more, with the fact that the argument that ends up winning out is March's "you just do what you want to do, don't worry about us. This is your life, you're the one that matters here." Because it's an interesting thing to pair with Tonari bringing up the whole, stop fucking keeping secrets from us, thank you for finally being honest for the first time in a year. I don't know, it's an interesting contrast Oima has there. But anyway, we then sort of end with this really sweet scene with Yuki that I really do like. And I'm just acknowledging, you know, we're so different. You know, you can be God forever. I've only got 60 years. And, like, I don't know. I'm trying to work out exactly what he's getting at here, actually, now that I look at it again. But, like, if there's still peace in 60 years, maybe it really is over. I mean, I doubt it, because we know the Knockers can be patient, because, you know, they waited 500 years after Renril. But still, it's a little, like it's a sweet moment from Yuki here. The whole, like, watch me until the end, and then make your decision. It doesn't really make any sense, as Fushi points out. I can't really do that, because the power of God will be gone at that point. But, you know, it's a nice thought. It is definitely a nice thought. But yeah, I really do like the sort of everyone having their own unique opinions on what Fushi should do. You know, those who want Fushi to gain more power, those who want things to sort of stay the same. Gugu, who's of course his first thought is always Fushi because he's the goodest of boys. And then yeah, the bit with Yuki that I am sort of curious, like, I don't know, is this a sign that we're about to start fast forwarding to the end of Yuki's life? Because I think there still is something to do in the next 3 years, right? About, like, taking over God. But I do think we're going to be seeing Yuki die real world time sooner rather than later. You know, whether or not a knocker kills him, whether or not he lives to the end of his natural lifespan, we don't really know. But I don't know. I don't think Yuki will be around much longer from our perspective. But yeah, all in all, I really love the second chapter. I love the debate about becoming God. I think it's really good, and you know, I like seeing everyone's particular, like, viewpoints fleshed out. It's all good shit. And, like, I also like reminding, you know, it's nice to see everyone show how much they care about my boy Fushi, because Fushi really does deserve the world. He's been through it the past several centuries. And I don't know. I kind of want him to say the same, but I don't know that he will. Because this is a series that, in the end, it is kind of about change. And we'll see if that ends up, you know, playing out. Because like I sort of said in the first chapter here, part 2, the whole no one has to die ever does seem to run counter to the series' themes. So we'll just see how all that ends up playing out as the storyline nears its endgame. So with that said, I'm going to leave this video off here. Hope you all enjoyed the chapter and the video itself. If you did, feel free to drop me a like or subscribe, or, do whatever makes you happy, And as always, your life is your own, okay? Bye!